Today's guest knows how to turn vision into velocity without losing the human heartbeat of leadership. Keith Harris is a seasoned HR executive, leadership coach, and change architect with a career that spans Fortune 500 giants, community nonprofits, and everything in between. From talent development to AI-informed workforce strategy, Keith brings a rare blend of insight and integrity to the table. Get ready for a conversation rooted in people, powered by purpose, and full of leadership gold. Welcome, relational leaders and listeners. This is Cultivate, your podcast destination where we celebrate thriving relational leaders and encourage each other along the influence journey. I am Wendy F. Adams, your host and strategic guide. I believe work shouldn't be a four-letter word, but should inspire, challenge, and fulfill. Through a high challenge and high support model, we will explore the recipe for relational leadership that drives meaningful change. After all, as leaders, we're either driving progress or we're driving the problem. So let's grow together. Welcome back to a fresh episode of Cultivate. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming a leader that is rooted in people and powered by insight. Keith Harris, Chief People Officer with Operation Hope. Keith, we are thrilled to have you join us for the Cultivate Experience.
Thank you, Wendy, and thanks for having me. I'm looking very forward to our chat for sure.
Well, Keith, if it goes anything like our green room conversation, the audience is in store for a wonderful treat. I know that I've been excited for this opportunity to flesh out even more of the conversation that we've had, just a pleasure to have. So our time will move quickly. We know that that's what happens. So I don't want to delay. I've had the pleasure of getting to know you just a little bit more and understanding that question that we love to bring forth here at Cultivate, which is the why. Just like every good conversation, this time's going to fly by. So Keith, let's just dive in. What's the personal conviction or that lived experience that you would say has shaped the way that you lead today?
It's a great question, and I love that question because I tend to reflect back on something that was instilled in me long ago, and that is, to whom much is given, much is required. My why is, whatever talents I've been either blessed with or have developed over the years, I feel like belong to the collective. So I believe that, I've been very fortunate in my lived experiences and the things that I didn't do anything to necessarily earn. But even with that, though, I feel like, if I have an opportunity to give back to the collective, individuals who have not had the same advantages, then that's my duty and that's my responsibility. So.
I love that. It's what we hope to all find our grounding in, is obviously where we've come from, not forgetting that, what our responsibility is to those who are coming up behind us. And so I love that that's where you start, and that's where that why is grounded, and where we're going to really springboard our conversation, because that why has taken you far. So it's not a surprise for those who've engaged with the Cultivate experience that we believe leadership is built on authentic relationships, right? You and I talked about that in the green room space, that a pause is real, and that's what we need to lean into, is those authentic spaces. Can you take us back to a moment in your career when a relationship, not a strategy, which are important, transformed your path?
Sure. I mean, if I think about, kind of the pivotal relationship that did it for me, and I worked with some good leaders, some good managers, some great leaders throughout the years. But I think about a particular leader that I worked for, that I think great leaders challenge individuals that they have, been given charge over with great questions. And that's what he did I look back on some of the early experiences that we had. I'd been a manager. I think by that time I was probably already, a director title or whatever. And he would ask the questions like, what's missing here? Like who's going to step to the plate and lead? And he finally figured out that for some of us, kind of more direct communication style was necessary. And he said, Keith, lead. And I went, like, what? Like, what? Like, he said, no, lead. Like, it's an environment where if there's chaos, if people are looking for someone to provide direction or to provide some guidance or to give some clarity, like, lead. And you have to accept that mantle when you're in leadership. Sometimes you have to lead. Like, sometimes you have to make a conscious decision to do that, because that's what the moment requires. And he was really the one that had me to step out of some of my managerial insecurities and go, I'm going to try this. I'm going to give some direction. And the worst thing that can happen is we make the wrong decision. Like, that's literally the worst thing that could possibly happen. The best thing that happened is you exercise that muscle, that leadership muscle. And that was it. That's what did it for me. I had the pleasure working with him for over 2 years. And even during that brief window of time, the behavior that he modeled for me and the challenge that he issued, when the moment arises, keep lead. That's what did it for me. That was pivotal.
Wow. And pivotal, I would say, even to today, right? Like, having to walk that out and hearing that voice when you come to those crossroad spaces, because you don't get to a point where you arrive and that, yes, becomes more natural. Okay, this is what has to happen. But there are some tough things that we have to step into, or we're faced with in that leadership space, and have to be reminded we still got to move forward. What I also love that I heard you say is that place of questions, being curious. It is not, and audiences heard this, not my natural space to ask as many questions as I should, to lean in right. But it is a place that I have really stepped into with intentionality, because I see the difference when I do versus when I don't, with those that I'm working with, whether shoulder to shoulder or those who are looking to me, to be able to pause and say, help me understand, or what do you think on this? And I think there was also some just jewels there when you said, it's not that we have all of the answers, but we still got to move forward, right? That still has to happen. And so what you are doing and what you emulate for those who you are leading, that says, it's not that Keith has it all wrapped up, but he is showing us how to be able to move forward together. And I think that cannot be missed. There's been space for you to be in the boardroom and space for you to be in that community collaboration room. Your leadership spans from everything from Fortune 500 to nonprofit strategy tables. What have you learned about adapting that leadership style you just spoke into across these vastly different ecosystems?
That's a great question. For me, it's defining the stakeholder and who's this. Working in the for-profit space, and you mentioned Fortune 500, I think, you figure out pretty quickly that there are people who have bought shares of this organization because they expect a return. So, it helps you to shift from just, the people that you work for immediately, like your direct, kind of reporting relationship, to the broader, collective. And that's individuals who are counting on you, who may not know your name and may not know your function, but they're counting on you to deliver a return on some investment that they've made. I have found that to be the case when I worked for private, for-profit entities, whether we're family owned or sole proprietor owned, or in the nonprofit space. And you figure out, again, pretty quickly, if you're in a nonprofit space, that there are stakeholders, there are shareholders. You have individuals who have invested in the organization, but you also have individuals in the community that are expecting this organization to deliver on something. So defining who your stakeholders are is always been critical for me, and it doesn't change. The individuals may change, but the fact that as a leader, you've got to figure out who's looking for a return on this activity. You got to figure out who that is, and know that that's who you work for. Ultimately.
That's who you made the commitment to, right? And that's not based on a tax status. I love that you brought that to the forefront. What is important is the who, knowing who they are. We're going to go back to asking those questions, right? And not saying, well, on this side of things in the nonprofit space, we're working with volunteers, and so that means that it looks like this, and it's asking, making sure that we learn more about who is in that stakeholder space. But if the title changes, if we're talking about a board of directors versus those that we're looking to receive funds from, it's knowing them and being able to interact and engage in such a way that we don't lose that space of asking them those questions, staying engaged, staying involved. And I love that you said that doesn't matter on either side of that coin, whether it was we're in the community. We said we were going to do something. Did we do it? Are we doing it? And do they have a voice in it? Wow. Right? It is. It is huge. And so, is it easy? No, my friend. But what you just said is very simple. We can tend to make things complicated because of what name may be after our on our URL, whether it's a .com or a .org, and it really is not a complicated space right there. These are things that we have to keep in front of us and to keep us grounded. What would you say keeps you rooted in those values, no matter what side of that coin you're on?
It's always what I found. It's always an aspirational goal, right? It's always that bigger thing. If you're making widgets, then you could just keep making widgets, make a lot of them, and kind of crank them out. But even in the widget making, place, there's like, we're here to provide a tool or a thing, that people are going to be able to use to make their lives better. Like, that's what it is. So it helps keep you grounded when you can always kind of keep your eye on whatever the more aspirational goal is, because otherwise you're going to get frustrated. Going to work from 9 to 5 every day it's frustrating. You're dealing with the day to day. You're tired. It wears on you, the grind. Whether it's a service that you provide or a widget that you're making, some of them are going to be broken, some of them are going to be have bad quality. So you'll get sucked into that pretty easily if you don't always keep your eye on the bigger why here is, this is the service that we're supposed to be providing for this community. These are the people that are still waiting for, help or to be helped, or these are the people that are still waiting on their shipment of, in my case, shipment of drugs or pharmaceuticals or medical supplies or whatever it's been, whatever I've, had to put my hand to. So I think that's what keeps me grounded, what keeps me focused for sure.
And, I know audience may say, well, of course, it's the why. I don't make this stuff up. It is the why, right? We get to these places of being stuck, right? How do we move forward? Or this is such a high hurdle. And a lot of times what it is we get stuck in the space of the how. You and I might see the how differently. And so to reset, let's get back to the why. Why are we sitting around the table? Why are we making the widget? It's not just for the making the widget's sake. It's because, and I love how you phrase that, to make life easier, simpler, right? To speak into those spaces so that we can give back to our families, give back to our community, and be a much more efficient and full human in this collective space that we're in. We've got to get back there, and that's what's going to drive us forward. We say here often, work should not be a 4-letter word, and it shouldn't. It does have those grind components. And then if that's all you have, it is going to become that 4-letter space. But when you can tie the task and that energy into, but we're moving forward with a grander, bigger why, that's what keeps us coming back. And so I love that you brought that straight to the forefront. We know that in the space and place that you're in human resources, and you've been for quite a while in different aspects of HR, you've led out in strategy. It's not just throw it up against the wall and see what sticks. Transformation has to go far beyond just compliance, shaping culture to drive retention. We know we've got to be productive and things got to be aligned. But what does it actually take to build a culture that with all of that is going to stick, to get that stickiness?
Yeah. Well, part of it, we've talked about tying behavior, to that why. And that's what's key. I mean, HR is a very transactional field. You identify a person, that person fills out paperwork, you put them into a system. 2 weeks later, you're going to have to pay them. You got to take taxes out. Like all of these are transactions. You give them their company PIN or their swipe card to get in and out of a building. All of those are transactions, but you have to really be able to tie that behavior into kind of the larger why, the larger mission. And that's what makes, putting HR strategy together so tricky for a lot of HR professionals, is because we do stay focused on, if the person's swipe badge doesn't work, they can't get in the building, like they can't come to work. So we get so focused on that sometimes that we forget that, that is in and of itself is not strategy. The strategy is, have we identified the right individuals, at the right time, put them in the right place so that they are doing their best work at work, so that they can help accomplish whatever the larger mission is. And if you can stay in that lane, well, now you're actually, working on strategic HR stuff as opposed to just the day-to-day tactical.
Well, and what I'm hearing you say, Keith, is it doesn't start after they sign the paperwork and say, yeah, I'm joining the team. That starts as you put the ask out for them to even put an application in. That is in the space as you're doing the interview process to start that this is who we are culturally, right? And this is what you can expect from us. Here's what we are going to expect from you, because you're here to make us better and we're here to make you better, right? So that's what I'm hearing from you is that's all part of this process. And because there are so many check boxes that have to go through, we can get driven as leaders, and specifically in the area of human resources, by the check boxes and forget that the human has to be the one that owns that, because that's what we're talking about, right? Is someone who's going to make that culture their own. And I think that that's something that we truly want to make sure that we're highlighting for that stickiness. We're not looking for the one and done. We all know that word retention comes up and up. I mean, I don't know if it keeps you up at night, but it's certainly something that sits in your wheelhouse as an HR professional. What are we going to do about that? And so I'm always curious when you're having conversation with senior leadership and you're around that table, you're speaking into that. How do you drive that conversation when it says, what do we need to do to keep them? What's happening there? What's that strategy for you?
Gosh, I wish there was a magic bullet to what you could either say or do, even for that matter, that would keep people engaged for long periods of time at work, and that's the reason why we're having the conversations at the conference room table. And it's really not magic. I think as I reflect on what you were just talking about, there is a term called the employee life cycle. Which allows you to go back to even before they show up to say, what is this going to look like for individuals that even apply, and how do they get from prospects to finalists for roles? And so that's where the life cycle kind of begins, and then which I think answers part of your question is, and then what happens at the end of that life cycle? At some point, people are going to leave. At some point, people are going to want to leave. They're either going to want to leave the first 90 days that they're there, or a year into it, 2 years, or 3 years into it. But what does that look like for the organization? How have we accomplished the expectations, those mutual expectations that you talked about? How good of a job have we done at doing that? Because at some point, these individuals are going to leave, and it should be a positive experience for both parties for however long they were here. So those are some of the things that some of the phraseology that I use at that at that table is I want those individuals to be thinking about how do we tweak processes and procedures and the things that we do on a day-to-day basis. How do we tweak those things to make sure that individuals are receiving kind of that mutual care and meeting those expectations for sure.
I love it because you just spoke out partnership. And I think sometimes we don't step into that space thinking that's exactly what it is. We want there to be this buy-in, and it begins with, of course, trust, right? And so have we done what we said we were going to do? Did we even say it up front clearly enough? And then creating space that if it is unclear, that someone can raise their hand and say, help me understand, when you get to that 90-day point and said, this is what we said, but this is what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. And can we have help me understand that? So I love how you painted that picture, because it takes me to that next place that I want us to get into. When there is a misstep, right? I know you have in your tenure you've come across those points in time where leaders stall out, right? Transformation's not moving forward. What do you see as one of the cultural missteps that we tend to find ourselves falling into?
Well, wow, it's complicated because there's so many reasons why things fail and
Mm.
things don't work. And so you have to be able to be smart enough to be able to go backwards, through process and make sure you figure out, kind of where the ball was dropped. But I think, one of the biggest areas that I've seen is you get married to whatever that expectation is, to a point where you don't, where you're almost afraid to just admit that you started off
Mm.
on the wrong. You have to humble yourself as a leader and say, guys, going into this is what we thought. And these are the factors that changed during the period of time. And we're not going to be so stubborn, and determined to try to, force our way through something that doesn't work. We're going to admit that this doesn't work. And then we're going to, try it again. The other thing that you've got to do is you've got to make sure everybody's a part of that conversation, make sure everybody's included, because you have to win together, or you're going to fail together. So if you start the blame game and say, well, it's purchasing's fault, or it's marketing's fault, or it's whatever, like they are the reasons why. No, we missed, we missed as an organization. And so we're going to win as an organization. We're going to bring everybody kind of back to the table. We're going to give everyone an opportunity to do the deep dive. We're going to give everybody an opportunity to be included in the how do we get ourselves kind of out of this. But that it starts with just a place of just real humility, because things sometimes don't work out the way they were planned. They just don't.
Keith, you just took us back to one of those. Yeah, that's simple. That ain't easy. Right? You said, let's pull the mirror out.
Yeah.
As leaders, we have to put that mirror and say, okay, it starts here. And where are those places and spaces that I as a leader have to own?
Mhm.
And to your point, we just said we don't have all of the answers and we can get it wrong. So when we do we own it? Right? So that and it is a we rise together, and we're down in those trenches together. And I think that speaks so much to the tenure that you've had in the different spaces that you've served, and where there has been that success is because of that. And I love that you bring that to the forefront, where that was the first thing out of your mouth, is like, look, we got to own this. Well, first we've got to be actually able to know what this is, right? And so taking the time to make sure that that all of the partners, the stakeholders, are at the table with a voice. I want us to shift into a space that can be very controversial, even in my space. I know that with colleagues, and that is our friend AI.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
You have not just space and time, but certification, in that AI space. You sit at an intersection with HR,
Mm-hmm.
all human insight, and now this place of a tool, artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
So tell me, because this is not new to you, what's one myth that you'd like to bust about the robots taking us over?
Sure. So, wow, I have so many thoughts, but I will narrow it down to a couple. One is, and I wish I could take credit for this, but I think I heard someone say this, that the myth that AI is going to take everyone's job is just that.
Mm-hmm.
AI is not going to take people's jobs. AI, I should say, the individuals who know how to use artificial intelligence will stay gainfully employed. The individuals that never learn how to use it are probably going to get left behind. So AI in and of itself as a tool is not ever going to be able to take, a human being's job, because it is less intelligent than it is fast. And that really kind of gets into my other, kind of myth about artificial intelligence. Like, don't look for it to think for you. Look for it to just make everything so much more efficient, so much exponentially faster to come to the conclusions that it would have taken you, in some cases, years and years just to research and come up with, or search the internet, so understand that AI is really kind of less about having something that is actually intelligent, because it's not. It is just, it's regurgitating what's already in it, which is pretty much the everything that's on the internet right now. So, and it just can bring it to the forefront and compare it and analyze it and put it in format for you, really, really, really quickly. But yeah, it is going to be important that we understand how AI is going to affect all of us as we move forward. And I usually kind of start with speed. I start with speed.
Well, and I appreciate that. Because all of us, whether we are reticent to it or whether we have fully embraced it, and some of us have embraced it to an extent, but that's a different podcast. That it is, you have to be we have to understand it. There's got to be knowledge of it. We can't sit in a space of just being ignorant to what it can do. And you said it, speed. I think that's probably the biggest opportunity that we have when we talk about merging these tech tools, whoever your favorite is, with relational leadership, is if this can do that, then I can do what only I can do to relate to the other humans in my space. And that's something that I have had to walk through in an understanding and engaging with, because I love doing this, but guess what? We've got tech in front of us that's allowing us to do what we're doing to keep that relational piece together. So it's recognizing we've been in this pool for a while, and right, we need to understand where it is and where it's going. So I appreciate that you really laid that out in a place that was palatable, and you also weren't shoving anything down anyone's throat.
Nope. Everyone is gonna adopt and adapt in their own space and how they digest information. I think one of the things that's important, though, for a leader is, again, to ask right questions. So shove things down people's throat, make them do things, and they're going to do it for a little while because they're going to, because fear is absolutely a motivator. But I'd much rather ask you, it says, okay, well, these are the 25 tasks that you say that you've got going on. Have you given some thought to how you can, automate some of them or use technology to make those things faster or make them easier? So I asked you a question, and now the challenge is, now you got to think, now you got to think about, is it feasible? Well, I can see it in certain ways, but not in other, so now you're getting it on your own time and in your own way. And that's what great leaders do, I think, is ask the right questions to get people to inspired to do better work.
Well, and that's it. You hit it. That's inspiring, right? It's not just do this because I said to. It's, oh, I get to, right? And what they then can take and run with and own in that space, which that's a great transition to the amount of work that you've put into yes, your career and building as a leader. But that isn't just for you, right? We're talking about the fact of legacy and how you're handing this over and forward with those. So we're building and mentoring others. How do you identify someone with untapped potential and then coach them? Because that's what it sounds like we're talking about here. When for them to see it and to bring that out. What's your tools? What does that look like?
I hate to keep going back to the same, but you have to know how to ask the right questions. What I learned about coaching, and I did get certified in personal coaching during COVID, because everyone was looking to try to pivot. I was going to say, well, maybe HR is not going to be it. Maybe I'll just be a full-time coach. So I got certified in coaching. I did recently get certified in artificial intelligence and human, learning how humans use technology and specifically AI. But for me, mentoring has always been about reflecting on how you grew and what happened, and then replicating some of that dynamic. I grew more when I had people ask me questions. Keith, what are you going to do now? Well, Keith, how are you going to accomplish, that? Well, what about this? Or what do you think about this? Or if we had to do this, what are your thoughts on it? So I reflect back on when I grew is when someone challenged me to figure out what the goal was, and then start thinking about how I was going to accomplish that goal, and then just kind of deconstructing from there. All right, well, let's talk about, what do you think some of the obstacles are to you getting there? and people are just smarter than, than we give them credit. I mean, people are smarter than they think they are. Even.
That's it.
But
That's it.
you have to know how to ask the right probing questions to check and challenge people's assumptions that I am here as a leader to tell you what to do. That's why you get to be the leader, because you get to be the one that tell everybody what to do. And I hate to say it, it happens too often that's how people get to get appointed to leadership roles, and then they start repeating that behavior to people. So it's a behavior that you hope and you trust is going to be rewarded much more. In who's a great coach, who's a great mentor, who's a great person that challenges you to think better, whether you're a peer or a subordinate or the boss. Who are those individuals, and maybe we should reward that behavior instead.
And yes, how do we bring that up and for people to be able to see, oh, that works. I don't have to, someone will, follow a leader that they want to, that they get to, not that they have to. And how do we become that space? How do we emulate that? Especially in the emerging leader space, right? We have them all around us. I mean, you know this better than anyone with the sector that you're in. 5 generations in the workplace at the same time. We're all bringing these different, unique, and special components to the table. Those that are coming up behind us, they've watched for a while and said, we're not doing that. But how... And they are in that place where they're asking a lot of questions. Yeah. If we create space for them to be able to do that, right? Do they feel safe to be able to do that? What's one piece of advice? You've got emerging leaders that are around you that you don't want them to miss. They're listening today. What's that one thing that they really need to hold on to?
Wow. Boy, that's a tough one. Well, I talked a lot about embracing technology already. But I think it's, if you don't gain anything else, gain understanding, because the old model of gaining experience was what our parents, in some cases even grandparents, really kind of poured into us is you don't know anything because you just don't have enough experience. And the shift for me came, and I've got adult daughters. The shift for me came when I started understanding how they process advice that you give them. They're not listening to the whole experience thing, because they want to know, how can I get to where I want to get to as soon as possible, like quicker, because being at the same place for 25, 30, 35 years didn't really work out that great for you guys, because y'all got either laid off or you just worked yourself to death. And so how can I get what I want out of a situation, sooner than later? So I think for young folks now, it's, gain an understanding, know your business, like whatever it is, get that understanding, research, again, know your business, know whatever your business, know what your passion is, research that. Don't just say, I want to be, or this is what interests me. How knowledgeable can you get in that space to where, people see you as credible, even though you are younger in experience? Because they're just not gonna, the whole just sit in the corner and wait your turn thing, it just doesn't resonate with them at all. So
no, you're absolutely correct, and that will be a complete shutdown. We will have lost trust at that point, right? So we do know those things. It's got to go beyond our head knowledge, though, and how do we walk that out and engage with them? And I love that direction that you went to with that question, because I think that's the space that at some point, frankly, frustrated me. And now that I love and I embrace working with those emerging leaders, I didn't understand. And again, so many generations in the same space at the same time, recognizing we do all bring our superpowers, and there's that kryptonite. So how do we speak that out? Keith, it's hard to believe that we're turning the corner on our conversation and wrapping things up, but I would be remiss if I didn't get just a couple more in there. You have spoken about so many of the aspects of your career. Today, you're with Operation Hope, and it's a powerful mission that organization is walking out, and it's urgent. How do you lead with hope in a world that's weary?
Well, it's I think courage is is the key word that resonates with me in this time that we live in this period that we live in. I think what we do more, boldly than anything else is just give ourselves credit for being courageous in the face of adversity. I think people respect that. I think people respect when, our mission is all around financial literacy, and what resonates with me more than anything else, any aspect of that, in terms of all of the little catchphrases, is disrupting poverty. If you think about what poverty represents and how people find themselves, there's poor people and then there's people who are just, in the cycle of poverty. How do you disrupt that cycle? How do you, and you do it by education and awareness.
That's right.
The one thing that I carry with me almost daily to work is, when it comes to financial literacy, you are only as smart as your parents taught you up until 18, 19, 20 years old. That's how smart you are. Like you're gonna pattern those behaviors, whether it were healthy behaviors or non-productive behaviors or whatever it was. You're still gonna pattern those behaviors, and then you start getting smarter. So you can't fault someone who says, my credit score is very, very low. Like, how are you judging them when their parents' credit score was probably pretty low too? And they didn't know how to manage that part of their lives. Same with savings, or same with, making bad, business decisions, or whatever it is. You're probably just repeating the same behavior. So for me, and it really kind of goes back to my why as well. I've been very fortunate in my own life, in my world. I haven't done everything perfectly, and didn't have everything as a silver spoon kid, but I've at least been smart enough to understand, hey, my parents were educated people and they only knew so much. And so my role now is, now that I'm older and I've educated and I've got formal, education, and I've got life experiences. Well, my role now is to teach my kids differently. And not just my kid, I got to teach your kid differently as well.
Yes.
Because that's where the whole collective comes in. So I'm not sure that
I love it.
I'm not sure that answers your question, but that's
no.
What resonates with
well, you just started into a whole new episode. Well, I love. No, you did answer the question. I love the courageous, because we got to ask some courageous questions. I've got a wonderful friend and colleague, and that is something she brings to the table all the time. We've got to be brave in the questions that we ask, the conversations we step into, and then be willing to stick around for the answers, right? And all of that comes in that space of trust. Have we trusted? Have we created a space where people are going to speak into those spaces? But no, you said it. It's not just about your children. It's about the fact that we are in this collective and we do affect each other, and keeping that in the forefront of all of our whys. Well, I just want to, you have brought us to a place and space of nothing that we heard today stays here. I mean, we're chewing on it. You've given us a lot to think about. And for that reason, I want to say, a tremendous thank you in that space. You've given us a glimpse into your journey in relational leadership, but you definitely have put a mirror up for the rest of us to be able to look at ours. I'd be remiss, because I know that there is more to Keith than what we have heard today, if I didn't ask you a couple just fun questions.
Sure.
Favorite comfort food, go-to meal when life just is racing.
Wow. It's oxtails for me. Like, it is.
Come on.
Come on. I've got some West Indian heritage as well, but it's greasy, like well prepared oxtails and rice and peas. Like, that puts me into a happy place all day long. So.
Keith Harris, why are you finding more places for us to connect? I love it. I love it. All right. Okay. So let's take this one. One more. Who is Keith? If your leadership had a soundtrack, what's one song that would be on it?
Wow. One song.
I know, right?
Ooh, there's so many more. My musical repertoire is pretty deep. It's pretty wide. Let's see. My leadership. I don't even know if it would be a popular song. I'd say it's really more like one day at a time.
Yeah.
One day at a time, sweet Jesus. Just
Yeah.
that's all I'm asking. Just today to get up in the morning and whatever decisions, I'm faced with, let me get through this day so that I can move on to the next day and learn from what I didn't do yesterday and learn what I can do better, moving forward. That's certainly a part of my prayer life as well. But that's really that will kind of sum it up for me.
Well, you can't get any better than that. You just can't. I appreciate that so much. Keith, thank you so much for sharing your story. Like I said, you've just given us a glimpse, but you've given into you, but you've given us so much for us. Your insights, your intentionality, they've been impactful. They're contagious. It's just been an absolute pleasure having you on today.
Thank you so much, Wendy. And I appreciate you having me. I've really, really enjoyed being a guest.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Look forward to more. Well, collaborators of Cultivate, that's a wrap, but it is never the end because each of us brings our own special flavor to the mix of relational leadership. So until next time, let's keep stirring things up. Let's make an impact and let's continue to be better together. Thanks, everyone. Before we sign off today, I want to send out huge appreciation to our listeners for tuning in. I hope you felt seen, heard, and inspired to level up your own leadership journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you're ready to level up your leadership, connect with me at cultivateforgood.com. That's cultivate, FOR, good.com.